Hey guys and gals, James Stacy here with another ABlogtoWatch video review, and today we're taking a look at Seiko's Prospex SRP777, part of their sort of relatively new line of SRP cushion case divers. If you swing by my full review on ABlogtoWatch.com, I have a breakdown of all the various models, but they're all loosely based on Seiko's kind of iconic 6309 diver, and none more accurately than this model, the 777, with its black dial, black bezel, and this silicone style rubber strap. This is a watch I'm really excited about. It presents an absolutely massive value to the dive watch enthusiast, and it's one that I've had for some time. I've taken it diving repeatedly, and I've enjoyed every minute with this really cool, really affordable mechanical dive watch from Seiko. So let's dig in with a few specs. So the SRP777, along with all of its siblings, uses a 44.3mm steel case. It's kind of a cushion style, 13.3 millimeters thick, including this nice dive bezel, 47.25 millimeters lug to lug. So you get a fairly short lug to lug, making it a very wearable watch for one that's over 44 millimeters wide. 22 millimeter lugs that are also drilled, really encourages strap changes. Watch works on a lot of different straps. Flat hardlex crystal, pretty standard for a Seiko diver, works perfectly here. I love that it's not domed. It really doesn't catch too much light, doesn't require any great deal of anti-reflective treatment or anything like that. 200 meters water resistance with a screw-down crown, and the 777 on the included silicone strap here is 122 grams in weight, which makes it quite wearable. Within the realm of Seiko divers, if you look back into the history, arguably one of their most identifiable elements from the 6309 lineup was the steel cushion case, which is very well represented here on the SRP777 and its siblings. It really is a fantastic case. You've got a lovely kind of brushed top surfacing, and then on the sides it goes to polish. You get a nice steel case back that I'll give you a view of in a moment. Crown at 4, which is pretty standard for Seiko divers. Certainly you see that on the SKX line, and that's just kind of a legacy placement for Seiko. That doesn't obstruct, the edge of your wrist or things like gloves and wetsuits in case of usage that way. And fantastic bezel on this. Not too light, not too heavy, very clicky, not too obnoxiously loud, very accurate. One of the better bezels I've come across at a watch under $1,000, and really very usable. I dove quite a few times with the 777 and was able to use the bezel with both dry gloves and wet gloves, and really no issue at all. I really love the inclusion of the drilled lugs, as the watch is very wearable even on a 7-inch wrist like mine. Despite its size, you really just want to try a lot of straps on. It looks pretty cool on leather, it looks amazing on a NATO, which I'll show you towards the end of the video. Just a really killer treatment for this watch, and beyond the case, they've really represented the 6309 dial very well, but anyone who's into Seiko dive watches will know this dial because they've used it on as the kind of base aesthetic for their dive watches for a really long time. And obviously there's no major change here. If you're trying to look at the way that it refers directly to the 6309, you now have a Prospex symbol, and you have some subtle changes to the seconds hand and little things like that, but the main pieces are still there. You get the large markers, some of them being circular, which is kind of a key to the 6309 versus some of the older ones, and day date still well represented, and of course it's Seiko, so you get an absolutely ridiculous loom treatment, which of course I'll show you in a minute or two. But beyond that, the strap that comes with the 777 is really nice. A huge upgrade over that hard rubber, I want to say it was called the Z22 strap that came with the SKX line. And you get a nice signed buckle. It's a push pin buckle, so you can remove it, and you get this kind of nicely finished metal keeper. I use this strap to dive with the watch over the cuff of my wetsuit glove, and it worked perfectly, although you can see the strap isn't quite long enough to go over the forearm of a dry suit. So you'd either need an extension or just buy a really long NATO if you're going to put it over a dry suit. The watch will definitely last through the dives. It's an absolute tool when it comes to that sort of usage. So I'd mentioned that the SRP777 and of course all of its siblings represent a huge value from Seiko as far as a really nice dive watch for the money, but of course, those of you who know Seiko know that that's not exactly new for the brand. They've been making this watch for quite a long time. Now, this is an SKX 007, and to preempt those who will ask in the comments, I've modded mine with a 12-hour travel bezel, a GMT bezel, which allows you to track a second time zone. The bezel is from a manufacturer called Yoboki's, and you can Google them, and they make tons of various bezels if you want to change the functionality of your watch. I have quite a few dive watches, but I really love wearing the SKX, and I wanted the ability to track a second time zone really easily. So I call this the CMT, the cheap mean time, which works really well. It's a great mod. But moreover, this is an absolutely fantastic watch. These are readily available for between, let's say, 180 and 250 USD, depending on what time of year you buy and what you buy. There's a few different versions. But at that money, it's essentially the watch that any sport watch fan, any dive watch fan should own. You shouldn't question it. Just buy an SKX 007. And I've been saying that for years. I've had this one for years. And it's a really fantastic watch. The thing is would you spend the extra money to go to a watch like the 777? So you're very quickly, I usually keep the price for the end, but I want to kind of look into this. So the pricing on this list price is $475 US, but the street price is much closer to 325 to 350 USD. Again, depending on the model and your location and when you buy in stock, and they're very popular among enthusiasts, so the price fluctuates a bit, but you definitely come in on wrist, I would say, around 350 US, which I think is a massive value, even in keeping with what's available with the SKX. And the main differences are, I like the case better on the SRP. It feels somehow more divery. I think it's because it's kind of, it has that vintage inspired. It kind of looks more the part as far as that time and that kind of vintage aesthetic. And then you get an upgraded movement in this model as well. So the SRP777 uses a 4R36 Seiko automatic movement. So that's an in-house movement from Seiko. Hacking and hand winding is essentially the main feature set over what comes in the 007, the SKX line, which uses the 7S26 or similar. And certainly hacking and hand winding is a nice feature set. The 4R36 is otherwise very similar. You're talking about a really reliable, really fuss-free, low-maintenance sort of experience from a Seiko. And that's going to be the same whether you buy the 777 or the 007 or similar, like any of these automatic divers. The movements run for a really long time. They don't require a lot of upkeep. You don't have to baby them. They're designed to be used and abused and really just to be worn like a watch would have been worn, kind of back before they were just a fashion item. And I think that's how Seiko's still making watches, even watches like a new model like the 777. So, for a jump in price of maybe, say, $100 to $125, I really think this is the better buy between the two, but you really can't go wrong. I just love the drilled lugs. I love the case style. I love the slightly larger size. When you see it on wrist, you'll see what I mean by the slightly larger size, because the lug to lug is so short at just over 47 millimeters. The case is almost square on your wrist. It's just a few millimeters longer than it is wide, and it wears really, really well. But before we get to the wrist shot, let's take a look at some of that legendary Seiko lume. So here you can see the 777 with its lume charged up. This is going to be the same on most Seiko divers, certainly the SKX line, and any Seiko diver that I've had, they all have fantastic Lumibright Seiko luminous applications, and this is no different. It's very bright, it's very long lasting, it works beautifully when diving, it works beautifully when you leave the watch on your nightside table. If you like to nerd out about those sorts of things, the Seiko application is really one of the best in the world. And certainly it's the best at this price point. It's just it's a flat out amazing application. And here's the SRP777 on wrist. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm never really much for the rubber strap from a watch, especially when it's more of a divery style rubber strap. You have the venting here and a bit of a long tail on my wrist, but it's so comfortable. It's velvety smooth. The watch just wears so well. It doesn't wear too high. It wears just kind of like a classic dive watch. It feels big enough to be purposeful, but it doesn't feel big enough to be cumbersome, which I think is the important point, and it doesn't hang over either side of my wrist, which again is about 7 inches. pretty average sized wrist, a little bony as far as the seating of a watch goes. So the cushion case really helps with that as well. On wrist, it's just great, and like I said, the watch works really well with other straps. So let's take a look on let's say a NATO. And here we are in a NATO. This is my favorite way to wear the SRP777. I love the kind of slightly military aesthetic of the NATO, and on this watch it's very comfortable. It sits very evenly on wrist, and I mean, as far as the 777 goes, straps aside, if you're looking at this review and you dig the way the watch looks, that's about all the barrier to entry there is. Seiko's nailed absolutely every other detail. It wears beautifully. I think the kind of vintage aesthetic is great because the 6309 is such a great looking watch. And they didn't really mess with the formula. It's referential, but it works. You get a great movement. The fit and finish is very nice. The watch is very comfortable. It dives very well. It works great as a general sports watch. And, to put it as simply as possible, I don't think there's a better watch under $500. I think if we round it out between the MSRP and the street price, you're looking at, say, $400 US. I think you can come in under that, but say $400 US. I don't think there's a better sports watch in the world right now. If you wanted to save a few bucks, you could certainly go with an SKX, but I get the better case. I like the aesthetic a lot. I like the drilled lugs, and I like the better movement in the SRP. So that's where I would go with my money, and I'm certainly hunting down a 779, which is the red-black variant. I think they look really cool. And this has been my review of the Prospex SRP777. If you enjoyed the review, please click like. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do that. We're going to try and make as many videos as possible, show you all the cool watches we can, and if you want more details, more photos, and all that sort of stuff, swing by ABlogtoWatch.com for my full review. I'm James Stacy. Thanks so much for watching.